Welcome to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with your host, Lisa Kilray. In each episode, we explore how great leaders build trust, inspire teams, and turn meaningful connections into real success.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kilray, host of In Good Company, where relationships drive results. Today's episode is sponsored by WSI eResults. We help manufacturers and B2B organizations build the strategic foundation they need for AI-driven growth. Our work spans digital strategy and roadmaps, SEO, content development, and multi-channel digital programs designed to drive measurable bottom-line results. Recently, a client of ours told us they were so glad they started working with us a few years ago. And the reason they told us that is that we set the foundation for them, which has resulted in them getting worldwide leads through their website for their multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. To learn more about WSI, visit www.wsi-manufacturing-marketing.com. And now let's jump into today's conversation. This episode really sits at the heart of what this show is about, how strong partnerships, collaboration, and relationships help organizations innovate and grow, particularly in complex industries like healthcare and medical devices. Today, I'm joined by Chris Martin. Chris is the VP of OEM and New Technologies at Thompson Surgical, where he leads initiatives on the development of strategic partnerships with medical device companies in advancing new surgical technologies. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So just a little bit more about Chris before we jump into our conversation. He's got 15 years of experience at Thompson Surgical, and he's played a key role in expanding the company's reach beyond its traditional hospital sales model into the OEM collaboration with major implant manufacturers, which is a really interesting model that we're going to talk about more in depthly today. In these partnerships, Thompson provides the surgical exposure systems that enable surgeons to efficiently access anatomy during procedures, while implant companies focus on the implants and instrumentation used in the treatment. So Chris brings deep expertise in engineering, product development, and collaborative innovation. Again, welcome to In Good Company. I'm really glad you could join us today, Chris. So let's start with the big picture. For listeners who may not be familiar with Thompson Surgical, how do you usually describe the company and the role it plays in the operating room?
Thompson Surgical, our key products are enabling the surgeons to visualize directly the anatomy that they are trying to repair or to treat. So if the way I describe our technology to people who are maybe not surgeons, but we're a fixture. We basically make a fixture which allows the anatomy to be able to be held open for the surgeon to be able to see what they're doing. At the end of the day, our product is similar to an erector set or to Tinker Toys or a work holding fixture. The difference is what we are holding is tissue, not a part.
Very interesting. And it kind of makes you think, what did they do before retractors were even invented? How did they do that? Was it people?
Correct. Actually, it was one of the funny things that happened when I started working at Thompson was my mother, who was a nurse. When I said that Thompson makes a table mounted retractor, and she said, what do you mean? Like, this was back in the 70s. She was like, why would you need a table mounted retractor? Isn't that what the scrub nurse is for? And that was just it. I mean, you had 2 or 3 people in the operating room holding back handheld retractors for the surgeon. And then what we've been able to do is replace those handheld retractors and people with a static fixture.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's a major step forward with efficiency with people and allowing the surgeons to focus on the work versus keeping the cavity open for the procedure. That's cool. So as VP of OEM and New Technologies, what does that role look like, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What are your major objectives with this job?
My major objectives are, again, taking Thompson from a sales model where we were selling product directly to hospitals and surgery centers, where the hospital is the customer. The hospital purchases the product. The surgeon will advocate for it to say, I want this tool in my toolbox to do these procedures at your hospital. So the hospital would buy from Thompson. We're trying to grow
Okay.
from that sales model where we're selling to hospitals and surgery centers to sell to the implant companies, or other partners in the space. Where the implant companies would purchase the capital from Thompson, they would buy that capital, and then they would bring the equipment paired with their implant into the hospital. And in this sales model, the implant company, they buy the equipment, they own the capital, they pair it with their implants, which are a consumable, which they're generating revenue, and they're using our retractor to place that implant. So it's what it does for Thompson is it allows us to scale. So the implant companies, they're going to need 25 sets, 100 sets, 250 sets. So it allows us to sell a larger volume, to a fewer number of customers versus a facility by facility, customer by customer sale.
Right. And what does that model offer the OEM or the implant company?
What it enables the implant company to do is focus on the implant. They're able to focus on their core competency, and it allows us to focus on our core competency. So both parties are focusing on their strengths, their expertise, their market share.
It sounds like regardless, both are important, and the implant manufacturer is making sure that part of it's covered, and they don't have to worry about that, or the surgeon doesn't need to worry about it. That's amazing. I mean, that's a perfect example of a partnership that brings real value to both partners. So, can you share a little bit about Thompson Surgical's history and how it built its reputation in surgery?
Well, I mean, we our foundings actually go back to Dr. Thompson, who was out in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and he started the business in 1965, and he was an anesthesiologist, and for tonsillectomies, he had to hold it was called a gag. Basically, he was holding the mouth open for tonsillectomies, and he determined that was just, he got tired. He got tired of having to do that job, and he figured there's got to be a way to do this mechanically, and so he developed that product, and was successful with that. Fast forward to many years later, when Dan Farley, who his father was a surgeon, and Dan worked in the medical device space, and he had some ideas for a better table mounted retractor, and so he was looking for a manufacturer to make his product, and he contacted Dr. Thompson, and Dr. Thompson sold the business to Dan. At that time, and then
Okay.
Dan grew it from a pretty small organization when he purchased the business to what it is today. But the key is Dan's product was a table mounted retractor, and that was the most foundational part of our business. And his focus initially was on general surgery, so general abdominal procedures, and then over time, building on the foundation of general surgery, was able to grow the product into other surgical specialties like spine access, anterior lumbar spine access, cervical spine access. But our core business is really still in that general surgery realm, with
Okay.
liver transplant, oncology procedures, general vascular procedures, big open abdominal procedures.
Okay. That's awesome. I mean, it's not surprising that the roots of your company are embedded in, with real surgeons, and their experience and what they wanted to get, their need, basically. So, and you said that you really started out in general surgery. How did that expertise eventually expand into the other areas like spine and other surgical specialties? Was it a natural evolution because you already had your foot in the door with general surgeons?
Yes. So basically, starting with general surgery. I mean, every surgeon is going to start with the general surgery rotation, even if they do go into a subspecialty, like spine. And so they're going to see a Thompson, just like they would see, like a Bookwalter or other retractor systems. They're going to see these systems throughout their training. So they're going to be familiar with the Thompson, or familiar with our competitors. And then as they move into these specialties, from like general surgery into vascular surgery, they're going to be familiar with our product. And one of the things that has in spine access, particularly the anterior lumbar access to the spine, many of these access surgeons are trained vascular surgeons. So they first learned how to do vascular surgery because anterior lumbar access to the spine is incredibly, it's a complex procedure, and patient safety is really, really important. And so the access surgeons will go down, they'll place access, provide the exposure to the spine surgeon, and then they'll hand it off, and then the spine surgeon will actually place the interbody.
Okay. So how did the model begin? Did OEM manufacturers and implant companies start approaching you, Thompson Surgical, inquiring on how they could get your product? How did that actually come to fruition initially?
That is precisely how our biggest customer today found us. Is that they were working with one of their consulting surgeons, and in a team of consulting surgeons as they were building a new implant. And many of the spine companies will try to attempt to do their own retractor design and exposure design, and some of them do it well. Others have realized that they're better off partnering with an expert like Thompson. And so this company was struggling with the development of a retractor system, and one of their consulting surgeons said, "Don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, Thompson already does this.
Right.
I use a Thompson for these procedures, every day. So like this, don't reinvent the wheel. Go to an expert." And then they introduced us to that was now our customer, and then we paired together, and this is dating back into 2014, paired together and created an implant, a retractor system to help them launch a new implant.
Okay, great. So surgeons often say that exposure is one of the most important parts of a surgical procedure. Can you explain what that means in practical terms, and how does stable and efficient exposure impact a surgeon's ability to place the implant effectively?
The key is typically direct visual exposure. So they're able to see the anatomy directly. They're not having to infer through some other navigation type system or through a scope. That they're directly visualizing the anatomy where they're going to place that implant. So again, direct visual exposure, number one. And then number two is you don't want that exposure to shift or to move, because we're quite often holding back very, very delicate anatomy. It could be the iliac vein. It could be other very, very delicate anatomy that you don't want to injure. And so by our retractor holding that anatomy out of the way, protecting it, it gives them a safe working corridor to place the implant. And so again, stability is the key. Strength is the key. That's the biggest thing that they're going to struggle with if the exposure migrates or moves throughout the procedure. They're gonna become frustrated.
Okay. And how do these, I mean, these aren't short-term relationships. I mean, once a implant company or a surgeon starts using a retractor, they're not hopping from retractor to retractor. I mean, this is an important part of their job. How do these long-term relationships with surgeons influence the adoption and growth of Thompson Surgical systems?
Those long-term relationships, they are the key. So I mean, surgeons, there's a certain amount of comfort of using the same tool in your hands, for many, many years. That haptic feedback, that tactile feedback, knowing what that instrument feels like in your hand is a I don't want to say comforting, but it's a reassuring, it's a predictable use of that equipment. The surgeons need to be able to focus on the patient and
Right.
and placing that implant like in their correct location. They don't want to be futzing with other new and different things. So having familiarity is the key. And so I think that's where, again, building on Thompson's core product line that dates back, in some cases 25, 30 years, using those same technologies in our new developments is so important. It reduces that cognitive load on the surgeon, even if they're learning a new piece of equipment. If the user interfaces are familiar, from their training and from their practice, even last week, they're going to be more willing to adopt something new.
Okay. So, I mean, your job title is VP of OEM Partnerships and New Technologies. And when Thompson works with an OEM partner, what does that relationship typically involve? I mean, does this partner get involved with you in the areas of design, testing, validation, you know, regulatory compliance, things like that?
Literally all of the above.
Okay,
That's the key value proposition of an OEM partner for the implant companies is that they're able to offload all of the work. So literally what we do is if an implant company can come to us and say, we have a need for, better exposure to, to the, when doing, let's say, for example, we were talking about spine a lot. Maybe we're talking about total hip replacement or direct anterior hip replacement. They can say, we need exposure for this procedure. And this is what we need. And maybe we have these other tools that are different, and then the current retractors in the marketplace don't quite fit or aren't quite compatible with their implant instruments. They'll give us a very broad set of requirements, procedural requirements. This is the need. And then what Thompson does is we work with them to refine those broad requirements into distinct user needs, design inputs, and then we run it through our design control process as required by FDA and by our ISO 1345 quality management process. And so we're able to run the design concepting through formal design controls, formal testing, which is verification and validation. We're able to take on the risk management process for the customer, ultimately all building out a design history file that Thompson would own. We're the manufacturer of record. We own the good, the bad, and the ugly. If anything was to ever happen, from a recall standpoint and a regulatory standpoint, so we're the manufacturer of record, and then we then sell the finished device to the OEM. But at the end of the day, it's Thompson's got the good, the bad, and the ugly.
it's on you guys.
It's on us.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about the new technology part of your job? Not without sharing confidential things that are in the works now, obviously, but like what are some new technologies that have been implemented over the years that have really improved the Thompson retractor system in particular?
Well, there's really two parts of it that I worry about. One is to make sure that Thompson's product line stays relevant. The example I use is I don't want to be making film, right? I don't want to be a camera company making film, right? We need to make sure that we're relevant always in these new procedures. So we want to make sure that we're constantly innovating, and in the areas of innovation that we focus on are going to be materials, manufacturing processes. Coatings. Those are the things that we can do to make our products better, which will make them last longer. Usually, we're trying to make things, smaller, less mass. So again, new materials are important to us. So we're looking at things like using polymers instead of traditional stainless steel. There's also a lot of advancement around us in the marketplace. Things like robotic assisted surgery. That's a big move that's happening right now, and it's important for Thompson to make sure we have a place in this new world.
Right.
And I mean, the robot isn't necessarily blindly doing the surgery, right? But they're still going to be needing some sort of a working corridor. So the key is I need to make sure from a Thompson standpoint that our product is enabling the use of those new robotic technologies, or doesn't somehow prohibit the use of those new technologies. And so it's really a matter of keeping an eye on that landscape, knowing the innovation that's happening around us, and then ensuring our product stays relevant and compatible within that new technology.
Okay. So, I mean, being a non-medical professional, this may be a really ignorant question, but are there surgeries going on right now by robots?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In the spine space, that's they're using robots to help place pedicle screws. In what the robots are doing is they're defining trajectory. So they're defining a position in space to be able to then drive that screw. That's on the spine space. In the orthopedic space, for total knee replacements, they're using the robots to again help to drive to make those cuts. And those are opportunities for Thompson because
Right.
as you're and that's what we're porting ourselves from being exposure, basically opening up tissue and stabilizing tissue to provide access to also being able to stabilize anatomy. Use our products to keep the anatomy from moving in space, so that when the robot is trying to make those cuts, the patient's anatomy is not moving, and that's where
Oh man.
Thompson's technology is from a retractor standpoint is very conducive to supporting and advancing these other new enabling technologies like
Okay.
robotic assisted surgery.
Wow, that's really cool. I can personally say I've never had a robotic surgery or procedure done yet. I'm waiting for that robot to clean my house. And hopefully that will be happening soon in an affordable fashion. That's a great story, Chris. Thank you for sharing that. So, OEM collaboration requires a high level of trust and long-term partnerships. What does it take to build that strong relationship with those partners?
I think most importantly, just listening, learning, being adaptable, and I think understanding what it is the customer wants without necessarily them having to prescribe it to us. I think just being always being kind of one step ahead. Again, not giving them what they ask for, but giving them what they want. One of
Right.
the things that we've realized, Thompson, the stability at Thompson, the relatively low turnover that we have with our employees here, compared to some of the big implant companies that have, they tend to move people around a lot in their organizations. There's a lot of mobility within a very large organization, and so what we bring is stability, not just product but personnel. So there's oftentimes that we actually can help and mentor and train our customers employees how to navigate their own processes, because we've launched product with them before.
Right.
We can anticipate maybe a new team, new individuals, but we can say on this project, 6 months ago, this is how we navigated it. I think you need to go talk to Joe
Right.
over here in this department. He can help you. That's one of the things that building that long term trust is just knowing their processes, knowing their people.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that's a huge value to your partners that you bring to the table. So I guess getting back to the kind of the new technology part, combining that with your own OEM focus, do the OEM partners influence or accelerate new product development in any way?
They they do. They often push us out of our comfort zone. I mean, I think that's the key is that they have needs, right? And sometimes they're going to bring they're going to push us to move faster sometimes than we might organically do on our own.
Yeah, I could see that being the case for sure. So, our show is called In Good Company, where relationships drive results. So it sounds like, you know, Thompson has grown significantly over the years. You guys are a major player and leader in the space. How important is it? Sounds like it's critical about these relationships with the surgeons, the partners, the customers. Um, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's what makes the job. That's what makes this job probably the best job I've had is that we're able to see the entire, from a development standpoint. It's rare that you can actually see everything from, you know a surgeon coming with a need, right? I need a product to do X different, and speak directly with that user, that surgeon, understand their needs, and then start the design development, start with a napkin sketch, concept it, prototype it, run it fully through design controls, and then have them evaluate it together in a cadaver lab, have them beat it up, tell you it's great, tell you it stinks, try again, go through those iterations, and then ultimately at the end of the day get to the end where it gets used clinically, and then be able to close that full loop with the surgeon, and see their idea that you made real actually go help a patient. And
Right.
that's that full cycle of innovation is what makes it most rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. And exciting and fun at the same time, I'm sure, to see all your work in the lab with testing and validation come to life and actually be implemented in real surgeries. So, Chris, thank you for such a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your experience and perspective. Before we wrap up, where is the best place for people to learn more about Thompson Surgical?
Our website is a great place to start. So www.thompsonretractor.com. And then also we have a very, very strong LinkedIn presence as well.
Okay, and where can they connect with you?
They can reach me. My email is very simple, chris@thompsonretractor.com.
That is very easy. We will be sure to include those as links in our show notes. Before we officially close, I would also like to end with what I consider to be a reflective question. When you look back on your career, who is one leader who's had a lasting impact on how you lead today? And what's the most important lesson you learned from them, from the way they showed up in your life?
Well, I'm actually going to go back to I think I need to go back before Thompson to be fair. I worked with a supplier actually over in Shanghai, China, in a previous life in a previous industry, and his name was Mr. Liu, and he was a supplier to me. And I think that's probably where I learned how to take care of customers the most, was in modeling the way he treated me. Knowing that he prioritized the customer needs, and really gave me full access as a customer to his employee pool and his team. It was just a very, very transparent. There was no barriers. I could go walk the floor. I could go interface with his staff, one-on-one. People that were welding, doing sheet metal fabrication, one-to-one, and that's what I've tried to bring to Thompson with our OEM customers, is just a full transparency. Right? There's no real barriers. I mean, we're an extension of their team, and so I think just he taught me how to take care of a customer.
That's awesome. Those are exactly the kind of leaders and stories we love highlighting on In Good Company. Chris, thank you for ending on that note and for such a thoughtful conversation today. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I truly appreciate you sharing your insights and experiences. Call out to our listeners who are joining today. If you're enjoying these conversations, I encourage you to also check out recent episodes with Dean E. Carter, CEO for Instill.ai, and Dan Letourneau, President of Peoria Production Solutions, who doubled his company's revenue since he started leading the organization. I look forward to being in good company with you all again soon. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with Lisa Kilray. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay connected and keep building relationships that drive results.